Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. Today I want to address our pig situation. So we're getting ready to load our pigs up here in the next couple days to take to processing. And did they prove profitable this year with all the inflation we've seen, especially in the feed costs? So over the next week of working here, we're going to break all that down. And by the end of this video, I'll share that with you all. But first, we got to get ready to get the pigs loaded. Right now, I'm down here in the winter pasture they're in, and they don't have access to the corral in this pasture. They need to be in the next pasture up. So I do that up at our farrowing barn, where we can use the gates to move them around. But the way I lure them, of course, is with feed. So I've got to pick up the feed bowls and maybe even the feed trough if it's not frozen to the ground. So I'm going to go fetch the tractor first, and we'll start there. So come along. It's alive! Yeah, swine time. All right, so what we've got to do here is we need these 11, which are 11 pigs that we've raised out. They're about, they'll be 9 months old the end of January. They ain't making it to 9 months. They'll be 8.5. We need to get them on this side. And obviously I don't want the sows in here, so we're gonna just do a swap. Now the plan would be to use our infrastructure that we built, open this gate, let them over, but first actually going to put the sows in the building, close the door there, and then open the gate and bring all the youngins over. So let's see how that works. You guys don't come in, I'll give you learning listen to. Since they did that so well, I'm going to go ahead and give them food, because that was just way too easy. Knock on wood. All right, so that should keep the sows occupied for a bit. Now I just need to swing this gate. The problem is that ground is frozen. So we're going to have to chip that out of it. But I'm going to put some bowls, food bowls out here, so when we open the gate, the wee devils will see all of that and come straight over. Right, it's foos and let's pause for a second so we can do some digging. Yippee. Yippee. All right, so that went well, even with the ice and my frozen door and all of that. So we got everybody moved. So now the 11 that are going to the processor, they have access now down to the barn, which is where the corral is. So that's where I put the feeder with the tractor. And I'm gonna go down there and put more feed in those tires. So eventually they'll find that and say, oh, that's where the tire feeder is. This is where we're going to go from now on. In fact, they're almost done with the bowls. I'll probably go ahead and pick those up because I take those too. All right, so we're going to try a little experiment that worked last year. The pig, you can see the farrowing barn here. This side of the farrowing barn is where the piglets have access to. Piglets, they're 9 months old. But I closed that off, and it's the day before we want to load. So tonight, when they go to seek a place to bed down, that's closed off. So they either have to sleep out on pasture or they come down to the trailer, which now has straw in it, has a little bit of feed. It's warm, it's inviting. So I'm curious to see. This happened once last year, and I came down and everybody was asleep in the trailer in the morning. All I had to do was close the door, and that made that super simple. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, so it's the next morning at daybreak. I'm going to walk down here to see if the pigs happen to nest. They happen to just sleep in the trailer, since that was really the only option they had for shelter. And I'm walking because the side-by-side stirs them up. So if they're in there, I don't want them to come running out to greet me. Because if they're in there, we're going to go ahead and close them in, and I can just feed and water them in the trailer. 11 in the trailer isn't overcrowded, so they can hang out there for 24 hours. Looks like if we get up early tomorrow morning, looks like we can beat the snow. We have about an hour and 15-minute drive to the processor, and They're now calling for the snow not to hit till mid-morning or even around noon. Let's see what we got. Negative. Nobody's in there. All right. So while they pushed all the straw out and hung out there for a while, it looks like they decided to sleep out in the open. So we'll have to, later today, we'll do some feed and try to draw them in. I think it'll work. I could have closed them in yesterday, but didn't want to go 2 days in the trailer. Well, they've met us down here, so clearly they're hungry and motivated. So actually, I can go close that chute. Let's do a count real quick. Do a count.
It's all of them.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. No. Seven, 8, 9, 10, 11.
All right, now that I got him in there, comes the fun part. The fun part of putting tags in her ears.
Ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Are you able to film anything in there? Maybe from the other side?
Nope, not gonna work.
It's not.
Okay, wrong tags for the tagger. I loaned out my other tagger a while back, and it hadn't made it back to the farm. So you know how that goes. So my tags aren't working, so we're gonna go old school. We're gonna go Lincoln County. We're gonna do racing red. So my black pigs with the racing pinstripe is how the butcher will know who's who.
Ready? Is it clear? Yes.
So all right, so we were able to get our 11 hogs unloaded, and we actually took them a day early to beat the snowstorm that was coming. We got a pretty good snowstorm, and so it was nice not having to travel the day that it was really nasty up here. So I took the 11 hogs in, and I already have the hanging weights back, so I can do a cost assessment now. So there are three things I thought were going to cut into my profit margin: winter finishing, longer finishing period, and the massive spike in feed costs, inflation, the big C word, all that kind of stuff. So the first issue was the winter finishing. I normally don't like to finish hogs this time of year, but January 17th was the date that they took a ride to the processor. So if you think back, about mid-October was our first heavy frost, and when things started to go dormant, that's when they had a decreased amount of access to fresh forage here in the woods and in the small pasture areas we have. So I was a little concerned about that. Obviously, we're just going to go to straight feed at that point and have to contend with that. So we also went a little bit longer in our finishing time. So we went 8.5 months, where I'd normally be 7 months. Now, went back when I started with pigs, back when we had the Duroc Hampshire cross, we would only go 6 to 7 months at most, and I was getting some crazy hanging weights. I was getting 292, 270, somewhere around in there. So with these new heritage breeds, this large black Tamworth cross, they finished a little slower, so we needed to take that out. So we took it out to 8.5 months. And I chose 8.5 simply because 8 months would have put it right at Christmas. And of course, I don't want to be processing that Christmas, New Year's time. Now that longer finishing time can make for a larger pig, but there is a growth curve that starts to plateau after a certain age, and that weight you're putting on most likely will be fat. So it's one of those things where I'm testing to see how far do we actually go before it becomes an issue. So the third thing that I thought was going to cut into my profit margin really hard was the cost of feed. So inflation, feed costs, all that going up because of the big C for the last 2 years. And I got some numbers here I'm going to share, so bear with me as I check my notes. So in early 2020, so this was 3 litters ago, the average feed costs that included 16 and 12% feed, which is what I go back and forth on. Actually, I started out with 16 and then changed to 12 to finish, was $13.68 per 100 pounds. $13.68 per 100. So during the life cycle of this last herd that we just took, the average feed cost rose to $17.63 per 100. So that's almost a 30% increase. And yeah, I was definitely feeling that big time this fall, going to buy truckloads of feed on a regular basis. So that one kind of hurt the old cash flow. So with all those issues, how did it turn out? What did our numbers look like? Well, let me throw some feed down for these boars and we'll go over some numbers. All right, so I'm going to do this in a certain way. I'm going to take all 11 pigs and show the gross income from the sale of all 11. And that's selling as wholes. I didn't sell any halves, but there's some asterisk caveats to put by it. So bear with me as we go through this. So 11 hogs, their hanging weights all added up came to 2,132 pounds of hanging weight. And I sell whole hogs at $3.50 a pound hanging. So you do the math there, that totals up to $7,462. So that would be the best gross income that we could have. But that's not what I'm ending up with, and I'll tell you why. I actually didn't sell all 11 pigs to customers. 2 of those pigs go in the McClung freezer, so we can have pigs to eat off of for a year. We go through, the 4 of us go through about 2 hogs a year. And then there's 2 other hogs that I trade to a friend of mine on the other side of the state for beef. So he's got grass-fed beef, so I trade 2 hogs for 1 beef. So really 4 hogs I'm not getting cash for. So I'm going to factor that in here in a second, and I'm actually going to look at it as a cost. Now, technically, it's not a cost. It was just not an income realized, but it's going to be a cost to deduct from that large gross number. So I'm just going to go down a list of numbers here. So if I start with my 2 hogs that are going in the freezer, and I know which 2 those are, the total of their hanging weight was 402 pounds. So 402 pounds at $3.50 is $1,407 for my 2 pigs that are going in the freezer. And I'm going to have to pay the processing costs on those because my customers pay their own processing fees. So I'm estimating those 2 hogs, the processing should be around $400. Now for the 2 hogs that I'm trading for beef, kind of the same thing. The hanging weight total of those 2 was $398. So at $3.50 a pound, that's $13.93 that I'm not getting. So we'll take that off. And of course their processing fee, which would be another $400. Now my total feed costs for these 11 hogs from their entire life cycle was $1,486.29. Now I'm going to factor in labor here, and it's funny, when I've done these cost analysis videos before, and if you want to see some of the old ones, you can go back and search our channel. We only have about 600 videos, so just search profitability, pig profitability, those type of things. I factor in labor, and so if I don't factor in labor, people give me some grief about, oh, you're not considering your labor. And then when I factor in labor, and people are like, oh, you're not doing the right hourly rate because your time is more valuable than that, blah, blah, blah. So here's what I do, and this is based off of industry standard. If you're going to factor in labor for agriculture, it's about $10 to $15 per hour for unskilled labor. And feeding hogs, I consider that unskilled. My teenage boys do a great job of doing that, and it's not like they've gone to any type of swine college. Neither have I. So with looking at that range, I choose $12 because we're in West Virginia. Labor is a little bit cheaper in West Virginia. So I chose $12 an hour. Now, if you say, well, Troy, your hourly rate is much higher than that. Your time's worth more than that. Yes, sure it is. If I was charging the hourly rate of my marketing company, it wouldn't even pencil out to come even close. It would be, thousands and thousands of dollars we'd be off. So that's not really a fair assessment. It's, can anybody do this? And if so, what's the labor rate? So we went with $12 an hour. So at $12 an hour, pig chores take about 3/4 of an hour a day. So at $12 an hour over the course of 257 days, that was their total life cycle. And that actually included the day they hit the ground. So, when they're piglets, you're really not tending them much. But went ahead and just factored that in because you'd go check on them and still spend that time. So that's $2,313 in labor. And then I had some just random infrastructure costs. Since we have our pastures already established and all that stuff in place, then I put $250 in there for this litter, just for some touch-ups here and there, some repairs, whatever. Okay, so that total of cost, those expenses, including the labor and subtracting the pigs that I didn't actually sell, came to $7,649.29. So if you do the math on that, that's a loss of $187.29. So in this situation, we did not make money. But the big caveat to that, of course, is I will have a freezer full of beef, a full-size beef, and I'll have 2 hogs to eat on. So one more stat I like to calculate and track here, especially with this new breed, this heritage breed that takes longer to grow out, is I want to track my feed conversion. And by that, how many pounds of feed does it take to produce 1 pound of sellable meat? So what I'm looking at is obviously the total output in feed for a herd that we process from start to finish, and the hanging weight. So I'm not actually measuring edible meat weight, but the hanging weight, because that's a number I have. I'm not taking all my packages and adding them all up and all that type of stuff. So looking at total hanging weight, total feed. So what's interesting, the litter before this was the same breed. The feed conversion was 4.31 pounds per 1 pound of sellable meat. This time, this next go around, we were right at 4.09 pounds per 1 pound of sellable meat. So we actually improved a bit there. And I think that I can attribute that to, so they had access to a lot of mast, and we had a really good mast year. So there's a lot of acorns, a lot of hickory nuts, a lot of walnuts, and they were big enough to be able to take advantage of that. So they vacuumed the forest floor and consumed all that. The herd prior to that, They didn't farrow until November the 26th. So they had, by the time they were on solid food, most of the mass was gone at that time. So it could be something like that. It obviously could just be the time of year that they started out growing slow because it was a little cold in the season. Not sure, but I like the fact that I'm improving, and it's just neat to look at that and see what it takes to produce 1 pound of sellable meat. I also track a lot of other data other than just feed conversion. Look at the average costs, average weight, all those type of things, just to see how that pencils out. And I keep all that in a spreadsheet. Comment below if you think that would be a video worth watching, where I show that spreadsheet, how I do it, how you use it, and then even provide a downloadable copy of that spreadsheet for you guys to use on your farm. Because it doesn't have to be just for pigs, it could be for anything. But comment below, let me know if you think that's valuable. Well, the sun's going down, the temperature's dropping, and it's time to get inside so we can warm up a little bit. Appreciate everybody watching. Take care.